Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Business, Finance, and Justice Committee meeting. Today is May the 12th, 2022. I call this meeting to order at 3:01 p.m. Invocation, Representative Freeman, if you would, please. Thank you, Representative Freeman. Roll call, Legislative Clerk April Lindsay.
Patrick Freeman. Here. Sandra Golden. Present. Randall Hicks.
Present.
Thomasine Hall Osborne.
Present.
Mark Randolph.
Present.
Madam Chair, you got 5 present and 0 absent.
We have 5 present and 0 absent. This constitutes a quorum. All business conducted will be official. Next item on the agenda, we have approval of minutes, April 21st, 2022. Committee, I'll entertain a motion when you're ready.
Madam Chair, make a motion to approve the minutes with any changes as necessary.
We have a motion from Representative Hicks to approve the minutes with any changes necessary. Do I have a second? We have a second from Representative Randolph. Discussion? Discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Randall Hicks.
Yes.
Mark Randolph.
Yes.
Patrick Freeman.
Yes.
Sandra Golden. Madam Chair, you got 4 in favor and 0 against.
We have 4 in favor, 0 against. The minutes of April 21st, 2022 have been approved. Next item on the agenda is order of business.
Madam Chair,
Representative Freeman.
I'd like to make a motion to put NCA 22-050 to the top of the agenda.
We have a motion from Representative Freeman to move NCA 22-050 to the top of the agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Representative Hicks. Discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Patrick Freeman.
Yes.
Sandra Golden. Yes. Randall Hicks.
Yes.
Mark Randolph.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you got 4 in favor and 0 against.
We have 4 in favor, 0 against to move NCA 22-050 to the top of the agenda. NCA 22-050, a law of the Muskogee Creek Nation authorizing a supplemental appropriation to the Muskogee Creek Nation Secretary of the Nation and Commerce FY 2022 budget. The sponsor is Representative Freeman.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion for due pass.
We have a motion from Representative Freeman for due pass. Do I have a second? We have a second from Representative Randolph. Discussion?
Madam Chair, I think tabled from last month, so I thought there was some clarification in the budget that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Freeman, committee. This was tabled last month because apparently there was a mix-up in the budgets provided to the committee, and there were discussion about the use of the funds. As I mentioned last meeting, we were found in a position of need when Secretary Branson Thomas retired from her duties and went to another employment agency. There was not established a clear process of delegation, and I believe by additional funding to this department, we can create the position of Deputy Secretary and allow for a smoother transition. We'll discuss some other things later in the meeting that would illustrate some of the challenges faced by not having a Deputy Secretary of the Nation and continuity of operations. I have online Mr. Zechariah Harjo and in the audience, Dr. Kathleen Elliott, should other questions be needed that I may not be able to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Five. Committee, is there any questions?
Five, so is your intent to hire a deputy before you hire the actual secretary of commerce? Or kind of a sequencing here?
No, that's not the intent, to hire a deputy prior to hiring a Secretary of Commerce or Secretary of the Nation. The intent is to allow for the creation and compensation of an existing staff member. That we have qualified people internally, but without being designated as such, as deputy secretary, the authority could be lacking. So that's the precipice behind creating the deputy secretary and funding it.
So in your budget, for clarification, $50,000, that's for the local contribution. That's 22.
Yes, can be used for those purposes. And the other would be used for fees. We're members of chambers of commerce. I have a list of 12 chambers of commerce that we're members of, and we need to be involved in other chambers of commerces throughout the nation.
Committee, any more questions for Mr. Five or Ms. Elliott? Representative Golden?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know, with all due respect, to me, with my experience, someone can put somebody in a temporary position, so until they hire the top position, and when the top position comes in, they can add their deputy secretary or whatever. So to me, it's kind of putting the cart before the horse. But and I haven't seen an organizational chart, so I really don't know how people fit into this. And I'd really like to see that. Thank you.
This is Zachariah. I could speak to some of that, some of the questions that you might have if the council and Jeff will give you a minute.
Mr. Harjo, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think the primary need for the deputy secretary role is to keep some continuity within the nation in between administration changes. As we know, many of the cabinet members switch in and out dependent on the administration, and through no fault of their own, it's just part of our process. However, unlike some of the other positions or departments within the nation, the importance of having a deputy secretary cannot be more crucial to the Secretary of the Nation in Commerce. Primarily for the reasons because we do control and steer the economic development as well as the grant funding that funds the entire nation. And it's a little bit difficult to work through, the past several years with all of the influx and changes that have been made. And, even Secretary Branson Thomas, though she was approved 15-0 and confirmed, it took quite a lengthy process to get her confirmed. And if you look at our peers, the Chickasaws, the Choctaws, and Cherokees, we don't have to do what they do, but they have afforded their own internal government structure related to commerce, related to business, related to grants, a much larger level of security by having people in place long-term that are not subject to the legislative and executive processes that we do through elections. And we have a number of projects ranging in the hundreds of millions of dollars that require people that have expertise, free from being moved in different positions from the actual Secretary of the Nation or the cabinet level member role, there has to be a level of continuity that we are really paying attention to right now, because if we don't make the investment now, I'm afraid that it will greatly hamper the nation's ability to fulfill its obligations over the next 4 years. And through a number of different agencies, whether it's the FCC, whether it's ARPA funding, or these massive funding opportunities through the infrastructure bill and a number of other legislative measures at the national level. If we don't have a deputy secretary role moving forward, I truly believe that whoever is put in the role, no matter how qualified they are for the Secretary of the Nation of Commerce, they're going to be overwhelmed. And part of this request is to help fund the internal infrastructure of the department so that it relieves some pressure from that top executive assistant and provides continuity. And I think it could not happen at a more crucial time. As you know, we're having to close out and do a lot of grant reporting, but like I said, there are a number of economic development and grant funding related opportunities in the future, and it's hinged and depends on our ability to have people in these roles consistent. And I know that there was concerns previously in the previous meeting we had about the ability of us to fill the staff roles that exist within the Secretary of the Nation of Commerce, and then hire a new secretary. But I truly believe that if we lay the foundation, the people will follow. And I'll use myself as an example. If I were to move forward into either one of these roles, I would have to backfill the self-governance role. But when I applied for the self-governance role, there was no less than 4 people that were highly qualified for that job. So I have no concern that we will be able to backfill all of the positions that are open currently in the Secretary of the Nation's office. But if we don't take care of the top level, the cabinet level member, as well as the deputy secretary, which I strongly urge the council to consider, I think we're really hindering our ability to grow. And as Mr. Fife has stated before, we're in a position where the tribe, our numbers, our finances, our investments have grown, but we ourselves have not. And unfortunately, we're in a position where it's really hampering our ability to keep things moving forward through administration changes. And we absolutely have to. If we're going to be on a level playing field or even on equal footing with our peer tribes, we have to have some larger continuity beyond just one person. I know that the National Council took the initiative to create the Secretary of the Nation and Commerce Office back in 2014, I believe. And at that time, it was probably the right measure and the right move. But now I truly believe that it's exceeded the role that one person could feasibly be asked. And no matter how brilliant they are, and I think we all saw Ms. Tara Branson's Thomas's brilliance over, while she was in that role, it is too much for one person. And I'm afraid that if we don't make a move now, it's going to significantly hurt us, not just down the road, but immediately within 6 months, within 12 months. There has to be a delegation. And if council wishes to see how the internal structure would work, adding a deputy secretary role, I'd be more than happy to provide that at the next hearing and whatnot. It's like, or, I know I could go over some of the loose plans that we have right now that may not be in paper, but yeah, there's a lot of that.
Okay, were they just checking in or something, or were they actually? Don't think so.
Mr. Harjo, are you through? I'm sorry, we had to mute someone.
I think that's it for now, but if there's questions about the organizational structure, I can certainly answer to some of those.
Ms. Golden?
Thank you. No, I was just saying that, again, the administration is responsible for showing us an organizational structure and showing us how this is going to be put in there. And the other part of that is that the person that will be put in the secretary position hasn't been nominated yet, and that it shouldn't take that long, I wouldn't think, to put someone in there that's just as smart or more intelligent than the last person that was there, and let them choose to put this position in there or not. And so I just think that, again, we're so great, we should have that in here, and we don't.
Thank you, Ms. Golden. Committee, any more questions? Representative Randolph?
Can we hear from Ms. Elliott? Thank you, Council. Kathleen Elliott with Government Relations, which is currently under the Secretary of Nation and Secretary of Commerce, and it's my honor to be able to present to you today. I really appreciate the time you're taking, and one of the things that I have been able to do within the last year is do a really great job building municipal relationships and community relationships, such as the one that we just had a week ago with the Broken Arrow City Council, and we're hoping, and actually we have 5 more invitations with other municipalities to allow for our National Council to come and break bread and meet and share in collaborative relationships with Bixby City Council, Glencoe City Council, so that they can understand our council and we can have more collaborative talks in the area of economic development, public safety, our agribusiness. And so I believe that this would allow for an immediate impact, because it's not just political giving. It's like involved in community building. We try to build out the government relations department, getting the right people in the right places to speak on behalf of the nation and maintain those relationships. And we also have a really good community building partnerships. It also, one of the spinoffs is job creations. So one of the benefits that we've had with working with a municipality, say example, Sapulpa, there was a married couple that graduated from high school in Sapulpa, and they were in California, and they created a large company there. It actually was one of the vendors that helped in the Miss USA pageant. Well, they want to move back to Oklahoma in Sapulpa, and they came to us and asked for us to help train some workforce development. And so out of that, it's going to be something going on in Sapulpa. It'll create over 80 hospitality jobs for our citizenry. So the small amount of investment that we do has a large good economic impact, as well as being able to provide jobs for our citizens. So that's part of what we're asking for today.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Hicks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, Mr. Fife, if I understand this right, the new position is going to be the Deputy Secretary of Commerce. That's what the budget is proposing, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. And then on the actual budget that was submitted over, you have salary and wages full-time for $49,432. Well, that doesn't match what the proposed salary is on Schedule A. I'm wondering where that, maybe I'm not understanding it correctly, but as your requested supplemental on the bottom is, the total amount is 77,000. And your
I believe
proposed,
that 44,000 amount is directly for salary, and then the remainder between the
hang on, sir,
44,000 amount.
hang on. I don't know who's speaking or what, but Madam Chair has to allow you to speak before you speak. My question was to Mr. Five, so.
Are you Representative Hicks, is it? Representative Hicks, that is a prorated value since we are halfway through the budget cycle.
Okay. All righty.
Thank you for pointing that out. I was a bit confused myself there for a second.
Okay. And then I think Representative Freeman made a comment about the political campaigns for the 50,000. So Ms. Weisner or Mr. Kyle, if a campaign is going to a political person, doesn't that have to be approved by the council? I know in the past it came for council for contributions to go to political campaigns. So if this is approved, we're allowing this department to do it without council approval.
I actually asked that very question when we had our
Mr. Haskins, will you speak in the microphone, please?
ambassadors, or the individuals that were asking
Mr.
for
Haskins.
contributions to be able to make those.
You speak in the microphone so people out
I'm
here can
sorry.
hear it.
I asked that very question when we had the individuals who were asking for the contributions. And what was described was the creation of a committee by which to determine how that money was distributed. But to answer your question, you're correct. It just provides for the appropriation of the money, but it does not provide for council approval of how it's to be disseminated. Again, I did ask at that time about what the plan was, and what the suggestion was is that a committee would be created to determine how that money was to be distributed.
Okay, because in the legislation, it only states the funds will be used to supplement the salary fringe, telephone, fax, communication fees, and sponsorship line items. Political campaign is not in that legislation.
I think by having all of these things together in one legislative bill, it does provide some confusion. It, in all likelihood, may have been better if they were separated out and identified a little bit better.
Okay. Well, nothing against Miss Elliott or Mr. Fife or anybody in this department, but for me, I'm not going to sponsor this just for that reason, because there's been so many times that we've had political people come and ask the tribe for money. We give them money, and then we don't ever hear from them again. So at this point in time, I can't support it for that reason. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative Hicks. Committee, any more questions? Are there any questions from representatives in attendance or online?
Let me add something.
Representative Randolph?
Madam Chair, Representative Hicks, is there a way you think we could amend it?
Do what?
Would you like to amend it? Is there any way we could amend it?
Well, it's not even in here, but
Madam Chair,
Representative Freeman?
I want to amend this budget amount for the sponsorship for, I think it's line item, it's denoted as 56330 sponsorship, and remove 50,000 from this piece of legislation.
Okay, Representative Freeman has made a motion to amend the amount from 50 to $56,330. Is that correct?
I think it's the line item number. It's P whatever, and then it says sponsorship 56330, and then the amount, the supplemental amount is 50,000. So that, but the total number, excuse me, Madam Chair, it would be $1,227 and $127,268.
Representative Freeman, I want to make sure I have this right. $127,268.
Right.
Okay, that's what we're making the amendment.
We're striking the sponsorship line item and the supplemental above for sponsorship.
Okay, Representative Freeman is making a motion to amend the amount to $127,268. Discussion on that? Representative Golden?
Yes. Could we add, bring in an organizational structure to add to that when they bring it? Yeah.
Okay, we have a second amendment. You make that motion?
Yes. Well, he said he could add it to his.
The motion, I'd rather just get the amount,
Okay.
and then we'll address the organizational chart.
Okay, so we have the motion on the floor for the change, for the amendment. Okay. We have a second? We have a second by Representative Golden. Discussion?
Okay. Yeah. Want to vote on it now? The amount? Sandra, go ahead and make your motion too.
Do we have to vote on?
We need to vote on this one.
Vote on this one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we got to vote on this one first. Roll call vote, please.
Patrick Freeman,
Yes.
Sandra Golden,
Yes.
Randall Hicks,
With the amendments, yes.
Mark Randolph.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you got 4 in favor and 0 against.
We have 4 in favor, 0 against for the amendment of $127,268.
And Madam Chair, I would like to also request that they submit an organizational chart for this department.
We have a amendment from Representative Golden to provide a organizational chart for this department. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Representative Freeman. Discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Sandra Golden,
Yes.
Randall Hicks,
Yes.
Mark Randolph,
Yes.
Patrick Freeman.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you got 4 in favor and 0 against.
We have 4 in favor, 0 against. NCA 22-059, I'm sorry, NCA 22-050 passes
No.
with,
We only have 2 amendments that have passed. Go back to the main motion as a do pass
okay,
with the amendments.
okay, okay.
Unless you want to do more discussion, but we
Is there any
can.
more discussion on that? Representatives in attendance or online?
Now we do a roll call vote on the main motion to do pass with the amendments.
Okay, roll call vote on do pass for the amendments. With amendments.
Yes.
Sandra Golden,
Yes.
Randall Hicks,
Yes.
Mark Randolph.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you got 4 in favor and 0 against.
Okay, we have 4 in favor, 0 against.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is TR 22-077. A tribal resolution of the Muskogee Creek Nation amending TR 19-076, a tribal resolution of the Muskogee Creek Nation to suspend all special appropriations and donations as amended by TR 20-150 and TR 21-080. Ms. Killian, can you give us a funding source for the last NCA, please?
Interest on permanent fund.
Interest on permanent fund. Thank you, ma'am. Okay, TR 22-077. I've read that. We have Representative Patrick Freeman, the sponsor.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion for due pass.
We have a motion from Representative Freeman for a due pass. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Representative Golden. Discussion?
Okay.
I just would like for, just,
Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion for postpone indefinitely since since we amended the budget of the previous NCA 22-050. So I would make a motion now to postpone indefinitely TR 22-077.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Representative Freeman to postpone indefinitely. I have a second from Representative Randolph. Discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Patrick Freeman,
Yes.
Sandra Golden,
yes.
Randall Hicks,
Yes.
Mark Randolph.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you got 4 in favor and 0 against.
We have 4 in favor, 0 against to postpone TR 22-077 indefinitely. TR 22-085, a tribal resolution of the Muskogee Creek Nation authorizing the principal chief to execute a certain interlocal agreement with the Board of County Commissioners of the County of Pawnee to hold criminal defendants at the Pawnee County Sheriff's Office Detention Center in Pawnee County, City of Pawnee, Oklahoma. Sponsor, Representative Mark Randolph.
Motion do pass.
We have a motion for due pass from Representative Randolph.
Second.
We have a second from Representative Hicks. Discussion, Representative Randolph.
Chief Phillips, would you like to speak on this?
Representative Randolph. We signed this agreement with the Pawnee County Sheriff's Department. Can you hear me? About now. We signed this agreement with the Pawnee County Sheriff's Department to help mitigate in some of the costs for David L. Moss. Because we're incurring some pretty hefty costs for David L. Moss. Pawnee County Sheriff's Department agreed to, they'd come and transport our prisoners from David L. Moss to their facility and hold them in their facility. And they would set on them in the event that they needed to get medical attention while they were there. They would take care of it while they had them in their custody, sir. Any more questions?
Hello, Chief. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Committee, any questions? Representative Hicks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Captain Phillips, what's the average daily cost at David Moss
Monthly?
facilities?
We're averaging right at $250,000.
I mean, the daily fee to hold.
Theirs is right at $78 a day.
78 versus 45.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Committee, any more questions? Representative Golden.
Chief Phillips, thank you, Madam Chair. It says $45 a day. This is already in your budget to pay for that?
Well, we're going to move our monies around that what went to David L. Moss will be going to Pawnee County. I think we're going to move our money around. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Committee, any more questions? Are there any questions from the representatives in attendance or online? Chief Phillips, I have a couple of questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you say that, have you all already signed the agreement?
No, it's in the works. I think we had to wait for final approval from here. It stops here, then from there, then it goes further from here, ma'am.
I was looking at the services provided by Pawnee, and maybe because I like to eat, meals, they didn't say anything about meals in here. Is that part of the $45 a day?
Yes, it's all included. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and also some of this is typos because that's what I look for.
Okay.
But I know on C, under transportation, A, it says as outlined in section 6. There is no section 6. I believe it's in section 5 of the agreement. And what I'll do is I'll get with you after this and show you where I found some things. Not anything major. It's just little small errors.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mark Randolph.
Yes.
Patrick Freeman. Sandra Golden. Randall Hicks.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you got 4 in favor and 0 against.
We have 4 in favor, 0 against. PR 22-085 passes. NCA 22-058. The law of the Muskogee Creek, amending MCNCA Title 49, subsection 1, 105, entitled Editorial Board. Sponsor Representative Golden.
Madam Chair, motion to pass.
We have a motion for due pass from Representative Golden. Do I have a second? We have a second from Representative Freeman. Discussion, Representative Golden.
I just sponsored this because of what happened recently. We had a big discussion about whether or not the person that we were going to put on the board needed to have a law background, and our attorney said that it did need to be in here, and so I wanted to change that, and that's what this is. I guess there's also a question about whether that person should reside in Oklahoma, and I thought that was something that we should change also, and so that's why I put that in there.
Thank you, Ms. Golden. Representative Randolph.
Madam Chair, I'd like to get some time to Angel Ellis if we could
Ms.
to
Ellis.
address these issues. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to answer questions that you might have. One of the concerns that I have, and I understand, as Mr. Haskins was saying about legal entities and a legal attorney, an attorney giving advice and then voting would present a problem. But one of the main values that we find by having a legal background on our board is not that they give us legal advice. They give us an opinion from the perspective of their profession on the stories that we write. Our board is an editorial advisement board, so they work with an editor who might have questions. And I promise you, one of the biggest questions that my staff deal with on a daily basis is McGirt related, legal related. We are living in the era of a new judicial kind of setting, and we are vastly undereducated on what it means for us to kind of cover these stories on different circuits of courts. We're very local. We have not had experience in that realm before. And it's very beneficial for an editor to have that advisement that they can pitch a story up and say, would you look for inaccuracies? Because sometimes we don't really know what the word arraignment might mean, or we don't know what it means when you are talking about the difference between the 10th Circuit Court or an Oklahoma Supreme Court. We went to school for English mostly, and a lot of these words and jargons used and these processes that we must navigate accurately and in a timely manner require us to reach out to individuals who just have knowledge, and they share that with us. Just recently, we are down one board member, and one of the stories that was kicked up to our board had, centered around a legal issue. And it's a very valuable perspective to have, especially to the people whose names go on these stories. They're doing the best they can to provide accuracy, but they are not attorneys. And we're often having to do a lot of justice coverage, especially now. And it's intensely valuable for them to have that safety net of the perspective. So they can ask a professional who knows. And the last really handy thing, I don't know a single attorney who doesn't have a network of about 40 or 50 other individuals that they can refer to us, So if it's not their realm of expertise, they know someone. They can connect us to someone who we can interview as an expert. And that way we get the separation that we need and the objectivity that we really need in our stories right now, because we are documenting this new birth of a judicial era in our nation. And I feel like to lose that perspective would be a loss to the overall education of our citizenry. And finally, when it comes to the legal issues, and I'm not an expert by any means, it wasn't ever a matter of, hey, Spencer Torbett, give us legal advice. It was more like, do you see us doing anything wrong in this? And that's how we approach every story. If I'm writing about veterans, I will go to the entities that know the most. Did I capitalize corporal? Did I spell it right? Did I do the right thing as far as, the different companies? Because we've had that happen before where our Sterling Cosper, it's one of the funniest stories we ever tell, that he got the wrong number on a very prominent unit, and it was kind of a laughing joke, and we just don't want to be in that position. And then as far as limiting the pool of people to only those who are on the reservation, I feel like in the last year and a half, I have been doing extensive triage on our department, and we're still doing triage. We're not even ready to build yet, but to redo the board configuration offers so much confusion and inaccuracy and just everyday problems that we navigate. And we really need some time with consistent framework. We need to get used to it. We need to build within that. We need to understand it. And that would be a huge value for us. We have not even gone a year after a citizen referendum, and now we have more major changes that could really shake this up. And we're kind of a wounded department in terms of that. We see our name come up on the agenda and we're like, oh God, what now? And I would love to see us operate in an era where that's not the first thought in the minds of our staff, because it's horribly damaging. Every time it happens, we spend months and months letting people kind of relax and reacclimate, and then we try to plug back into productivity. But we have finally gotten to a place where our revenue streams are increasing, and we're doing a lot of really important news. The most incredible victory I think that we've had so far is that my last round of interviews had 3 Muskogee citizens. All 3 of them were highly qualified and ready to work for Muskogee Media. It's never happened before, not once. And we stole a reporter from KTUL, and I'm like over here cheering us on, because these are the places that don't really do well for Indigenous coverage. And now we're reaching out and plucking the Indigenous Muskogee citizens out of those mainstream departments and bringing them back home. And I'm just really excited about that. And I know that you guys have a lot to decide legally, but I would hope just to kind of keep that in your minds as we go through it. Do you have any questions for me?
Thank you, Ms. Ellis. Does anyone have any questions? Representative Randolph?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ms. Ellis. One thing I want to just add, observing, during our last campaign, the election board came forward and we had to get legal representation for their board. Remember, real quick. And I know that, well, I don't know, but I'm thinking the Muskogee Media does not have the money in the budget to afford a lawyer. So that's why it's important. And I'd like to give a little time to Miss Lansbury. I'd like for her to, Lansbury Baker now. I'd like for her to introduce herself. And I know it's hard to brag on yourself, but I want you to tell your credentials, because Miss Lansbury Baker lives out of state, but it's very important. She's got great credentials. She's got knowledge. She used to work here, and I think she does a wonderful job. So go ahead, Miss Baker.
Thank you so much, Representative Randolph. Like he said, I am Rebecca Lansbury Baker, and on top of serving for the Muskogee Media Editorial Board as president, I also work full-time for the Native American Journalists Association since 2013. I now serve as the executive director, and I appreciate Angel and giving that important insight to how these laws actually impact our citizens and our staff that are working in the newsroom on a daily basis. And just to kind of give you some background and context for the Independent Press Act that we have in place right now, I would say, looking and working in free press in Indian country as an issue that NAJA, tackles on a daily basis. One of the things that makes ours unique and one of the strongest in Indian country is this provision for the inclusion of a legal representative. And again, Angel touched on, how we utilize that board representative within, our leadership, but also I think, for us as a board, it's really important that we have that legal representation because, we're working journalists, we're not, legislators, we're not doing policy every day. So it's really important that we have that legal perspective as we're writing policy for the independent agency to follow, that it's in line with the local laws, with tribal law especially. That's why it's specifically says, have a background in tribal law, because we want to make sure that any policy or procedure that we're presenting to be carried out by the staff at Muskogee Media and the editorial side, is going to be in alignment with Muskogee law and with all the applicable, laws that we have on the books at all of those different levels. So I will, just second the importance of having that representative. And I was part of the, the consultants back in the first iteration of the free press law back in 2015. And I know that piece has made it into the different versions of the free press legislation that we've had over the years. And again, I just want to state that it's, such an important piece of the puzzle when it comes to the makeup of our, small but mighty editorial board. And we rely on that position to make sure that we are, following policy. And when we're creating policy, we're, making sure that that's in alignment with all of the applicable laws. So, and then I think the second part, I guess I had a question for the sponsor of the legislation. So Representative Golden, I just wanted to ask about the intent of adding the language that would require the board members to reside in Oklahoma.
Representative Golden.
Yes, thank you for asking that question. For one, where I'm coming from is that it would probably save money, especially in the instance that, which could happen, that all of our board members need to be here to meet with the council, and we would have to pay for transportation and such. The other part of that is the legal aspect that I understand. If that person has to have legal representation on the board, there's revenue from that agency that could put one on staff, and especially they could work with our Attorney General's office and the council legal also. And that is where I came from as far as putting this together, because it makes it cohesive. We're not in the business of trying to make this for any special person and make it where somebody can be on the board. We're trying to make it, or I am trying to make it where we can make it most workable for the nation. And I would like to say that this is not retroactive. It's not to take somebody off the board. It is to make it better so that we can put somebody on more readily. We had a nomination. We couldn't put that person on because they didn't have the legal background. And so I just say that it's fair across the board for everybody. And we're not trying to take anybody off, and we're not trying to make this special for anybody. And I would like for our legal counsel to explain to us again what he explained the last time about having a board member that has legal background that gives legal advice on a board. He said that we didn't have to have it in there. And if you have to have legal representation, you can hire somebody. That's my understanding.
Okay, before we do that, Ms. Lansbury Baker, do you want to respond to that? You got your answer?
Yes, I would love to. Thank you so much for that response, Representative Golden. And I think kind of just going back to my personal experience in working with the Native American Journalists Association, We've been an all remote board and staff since 2013, and we actually have an international board of directors that meets regularly, at least monthly. And I just want to say, to the note of it being cost effective, we found that, much like what we've, seen over the course of the pandemic, how cost effective it can be. We've been meeting as a remote board since the board was established in 2020. We haven't missed a meeting yet of any of the monthly meetings that we've had, and sometimes it's been more than once a month. So I would say, I've seen the efficiency of meeting as a remote board, and that, it doesn't require being in state to get some really great work done and to be able to work together as a board efficiently. And I would also say that, as a, someone that is kind of looking at that diversity across Indian country, especially when we're, looking at journalism, I think it's really to the benefit to have, up to the benefit of the board and ultimately to the staff, to have representation not only across Oklahoma, but across the United States, because that's who our citizenry is. So Muskogee Media isn't just reporting on the state of Oklahoma. They report on issues that are happening, across the US, and our citizenry is represented in that as well. So I would just add that, I think it's important to not limit ourselves to having just representatives from the state of Oklahoma on this editorial board, because your coverage is reflective of, the citizens that were receiving this information globally. So, but thank you very much for your response. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Committee, any more questions for Ms. Becca Lansbury before we go any further?
I do. I have a question.
Who?
Can you hear me? Representative Harjo?
Go ahead, sir.
My question is, I want to ask Ms. Lansbury is, how many times have our media department been taken into court?
I don't believe they've ever been taken into court yet that I know of.
So this hasn't played a factor then at all, having legal or somebody with a tribal law background. Matter of fact, it's been more beneficiary than it has been a hindrance.
Yes, that's absolutely correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Representative Harjo.
Thank you, Representative Harjo. Committee, any more questions for Ms. Lansbury Baker? Questions for Ms. Lansbury Baker from the representatives in attendance or online? Mr. Haskins?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The benefit of hiring an external attorney is because if they get it wrong, if they give you bad advice, you can sue them. If you're getting advice from someone within and they give you bad advice, you're just stuck with having made a poor decision. The practice of law is asking someone a question that relies upon their training and their expertise. And if you're asking a person who has a some legal exposure, you're asking them to practice law. And we have supplemented our laws with Oklahoma's laws. And in Oklahoma, it's a misdemeanor to practice law without a license. So if you ask a person who has not gone to law school to render an opinion of some kind, they're actually committing a crime. And with an attorney that's sitting on a board, if you're asking them something that is in reliance upon their legal training, their skills, even though I spoke to Mr. Torbett about this, and he expressed how difficult it was and how hard he tried to maintain a situation in which he was not giving legal advice. That is such a difficult rope to make sure you don't step on one side or the other, because you could get disbarred. If an attorney gives legal advice and they vote, they're a member of a board and they're a voting member, they could lose their license to practice law. So it's a very difficult thing to put an attorney in that position. And if you're relying upon a person who hasn't gone to law school to give you advice, you're probably getting bad advice, and potentially they're committing a crime. So that's why you get outside counsel to give you an opinion. It gives you somebody to sue if they get it wrong. And I understand the position that it has value. I get it. And it means you don't have to hire a lawyer to give you that advice, but that in fact is the problem. You're getting advice for something that really should go to somebody that has a responsibility to you that's not on your board.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Haskins? Committee? Representative Hicks?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have any questions for you, Mr. Kyle, but I do have a couple of questions. My first question is, who drafted the board qualifications? Anybody can answer that?
Ms. Ellis?
I think that most of the language in this bill was drafted collaboratively with meetings that we had prior, I can't remember about when, but I remember us meeting up here in the small boardroom and much discussion was had. Rebecca was there. We had other, representatives of NAJA there, and then some of our staff was there. It was kind of a collaborative input. And I totally understand trying to mitigate any kind of, liabilities that we might get into, but I would have to ask, how does an attorney ever sit on a board at all if a mere question endangers their, license and to practice? Many attorneys sit on boards, and this is informal advice. It's not a vote. Our editor shoots an email. Our board reflects their comments. You've used arraignment wrong, or the hearing you meant to say was probably not a deposition, it was something else, because we just don't know the difference between those. It's almost an editorial legal lens that they look through, kind of like cleaning up our grammar, really.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis.
So you could actually say the discussion was made amongst the board members. That's where the decision was made of the board actually needing somebody with tribal law or an attorney.
Well, I don't know about this copy that's being.
No, I'm not talking about the copy. The legislation had a list of qualifications.
Mhm.
That qualification has already been established somewhere. My question is, by who?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Some of the original language came from 2015 when that bill was adopted, and I wasn't even at the tribe at this time. But we carried over a lot, so all the best parts of all these folks who sat together at that table, and we considered legislation from the Osage Nation and the Cherokee Nation, and we pieced this out as our best practical, implementation.
Ms. Baker Lansbury, do you have any idea? Can you answer the question?
Yes, Angel is correct in that back in 2015, when the original draft of this bill was being built, it was in collaboration with National Council representatives at the time, and then representatives from the Native American Journalists Association, which is where I came in on. Before there was a board established, we helped build this language, and it was based on the tribal laws of the other nations with free press protections, including, as Ms. Ellis mentioned, Osage Nation and Cherokee Nation. So that's kind of the original text where it came from, and it has carried over since then in these next iterations.
Thank you, ma'am. Representative Hicks, do you have a second question?
Yes, ma'am. Maybe for the sponsor. Was discussion made with the current board as to why the changes were made, or if needed, or why there must be a board seat with tribal law background? Was any discussion made with the board?
Representative Golden?
As I said, whenever we were discussing the nominee, there was lots of discussion about whether or not that nominee was had a background for the position as a board member, because there was not law experience in that resume, and that is why that person was turned down. So to me, it makes it more difficult to find someone to be in that position as a board member with legal if they don't really need it. If they're an independent agency, so if they needed law experience, they could hire a legal person. That's what some of the other entities do. If they
definitely. We need legislation to hire an attorney.
Could you please wait? Okay, and the other part of that is that
Rep-
on, st- on st-
Representative Golden, I believe the question was, did you get with Muskogee Media about this legislation?
no, I went
Thank you.
basically
Thank you.
on what the
Okay,
attorney
thank
said,
you.
and that reason.
Any other questions? Any questions from the council in person or online?
Madam Chair, Willow.
Speaker Lowe, go ahead.
Hello, Madam Chair. You know, I think any independent agency, even with our tribe, should actually have their own attorney. It's bad business if you don't have an attorney. Just because you haven't been taken to court and, you know, you're feeling lucky that you're not in court doesn't say tomorrow someone doesn't sue you. And I agree with Mr. Haskins. You know, if you're having an attorney on your board and you get sued and they start providing you legal advice, that's where the integrity is broken, I feel. So I think Mr. Haskins' advice does justice, and I would be concerned to have an attorney on this board for the fact that, you know, I'd rather not get into that variable of them losing their license. So that's just my 2 cents, Mado.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions?
I had one more thing as a sponsor. As a sponsor also, like I said, I was trying to be fair to our citizens across the board. And this also includes our staff, our employees. And so if there is a problem on site with our employees, the board would be able to help resolve any of those issues rather than it being all out with everything. And so that it's not just because I thought of the financial aspect of it, it's because of on-site as well, oversight of the whole program, the department.
Thank you, ma'am. Final questions or comments? Representative Hicks?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And the reason I asked the question was the Muskogee Media Board, were they actually had any discussion? Because Mr. Kyle, have you attended their meetings? Have you attended the Muskogee Media? Okay, he has not. So how does he know what the function of this other board position is? How's he giving advice when he hasn't attended a meeting and doesn't know the functions of what the board member is doing? He may, Mr. Wiley, I'm going to use you as an example. He may be on the board. If we don't know his function, how do we know what he's doing? So I guess that's why I'm kind of concerned when we're trying to change this, yet we didn't even visit with the board and know who does what in their functions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
One of the main intents of the, I'm so sorry.
That was a final comment. Roll call vote, please.
Sandra Golden? Yes. Randall Hicks?
No.
Mark Randolph?
No.
Patrick Freeman?
Yes.
Madam Chair, there's a tie vote, and in that case, the chairman votes. Thomason Yahola Osborne?
No.
Madam Chair, the vote is 2 in favor and 3 against.
We have 2 in favor, 0 against. Oh.
3 and 2.
2 in favor, 3 against. NCA. Ms. Golden? NCA 22-058 fails. NCA 22-059. A law of the Muskogee Creek Nation amending NCA Title 37, Chapter 3, Subchapter 8, entitled Drug-Free Workplace, and creating new subsection 3-813, entitled Medical Marijuana License Holder Protection and Non-Discrimination. Sponsor Representative Mark Randolph.
Motion to pass.
I have a motion for due pass from Representative Randolph. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Representative Hicks. Discussion. Representative Randolph.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think you received in your packets something from Ms. Melissa Coley. That was from HR. We asked for some input from there and also from our Attorney General. I'd like to call on Ms. Weisner if I could.
Ms. Weisner.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Weisner, can you just give us your overall feeling? Have you had time to look at all this, and could you just
Thank you, Representative Randolph. First of all, when I was able to take a look at the legislation, I had a couple of concerns. My first is the application throughout the tribe and the various professions, from those who may operate heavy machinery and equipment to those who are daycare providers, and potentially light horse. I think that those considerations need to be examined from the different professions who are under the umbrella of the Muskogee Nation, as well as I would request a little bit more time to be able to make sure that this legislation would be consistent throughout our codes under the Muskogee Nation laws. So I would ask for a little bit more time to be able to look at these with those lenses to be able to make a recommendation.
Wonderful. Thank you. Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to postpone for 1 month.
We have a motion to postpone NCA 22-059 for 1 month. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Representative Golden. Discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mark Randolph.
Yes.
Patrick Freeman.
Yes.
Sandra Golden. Randall Hicks.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 4 in favor and 0 against.
We have 4 in favor, 0 against. NCA 22-059 is postponed for 30 days. NCA 22-060. A law of the Muskogee Creek Nation appropriating funds on behalf of the Muskogee Creek Nation District Trial Court to pay for continuous alcohol monitoring and breath alcohol testing services offered by Recovery Monitoring Solutions Corporation. Sponsor is Representative Freeman. We have a motion from Representative Freeman for substitute. Do I have a second? We have a second from Representative Golden. Discussion, Representative Freeman. Mr. Wiley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Freeman, for sponsoring this legislation. And this is important legislation because it addresses a major need here at the nation. That is how to address the runaway costs of incarceration. And I know Chief Phillips will back me up on this because he actually writes the checks for the costs of incarceration in these various jails throughout the nation. I want to give you an example, and it's in the millions. I want to give you an example. The state approved rate for incarceration, cities, counties, state prisoners, is $44 a day. That's what they charge themselves. When we send a prisoner over there, let's say to David L. Moss, that's the most egregious example. Chief Phillips says that's $78 a day. So they're almost doubling what their own cities and counties are charging. What we're proposing is another way to address that cost. And what we have done is gone out and found a GPS monitoring system. You know them as ankle monitors, ankle bracelets. You can put somebody under house arrest and monitor their whereabouts 24 hours a day, and that would be paid for in this whole process. It would cost $8 per bracelet per day. We're asking the council to give us enough money to fund at least 60 of those starting out. If it doesn't work out, we can cancel the contract on 30 days notice. Not everyone is a suitable candidate for home arrest, but the violent offenders, of course, that would not work for them. But there are plenty of offenders we could put under home arrest that we should not be paying $78 a day for. Let me give you an example. 60, which is how many monitors we're trying to get, at $8 a day would cost us $480 a day. If we pay David L. Moss for 60 inmates, it's $4,680 a day. So what that amounts to is a 1-year sentence for one person at David L. Moss will cost the nation $28,470 for that year for one person. 1 year of house arrest for one person with this GPS monitoring system would cost $2,502 per year. So you could house under house arrest 11 inmates, 11 people who are convicted or pled guilty to a charge for the cost of one inmate for a year at David L. Moss. And those are costs we need to get a handle on. I see that TR 2285 has passed through the committee. That's another way to address this problem by giving us other options besides David L. Moss. And most of our prisoners are at David L. Moss. That's Tulsa. That's where a lot of people live. That's where a lot of Indian people are. So we have a lot of prisoners there. We're asking the council to approve this legislation, number one, to save us money, and number two, to address an issue which I think needs to be addressed. Some people don't need to be in jail when they could function under house arrest. And if we had a GPS monitoring system like this, then we could have the company monitor them. They'll be reporting to us on a weekly basis and let us know, if someone's not complying. But I think it's an important piece of legislation, and I think that the costs are just going to get higher and higher if we don't start looking at other options. We're not ready to build a prison. That's hundreds of millions of dollars to operate it. But I think with these ideas and these ways of trying to cut costs, I think it's going to help us a lot. As I gave you an example, for one prisoner, it's going to save us about $24,000 a year for 1 year. So I appreciate the committee's consideration and appreciate the legislation being introduced.
Thank you, Mr. Wiley. If there's any questions from the committee for Mr. Wiley? Representative Hicks?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Wiley, I just got one question for you. You know how much the actual cost for one of the monitors is?
$8 per day.
I mean, for the whole monitor, if it was broken or?
Oh, the cost to replace them. This is where I need Region here. He's our probation officer. I don't know the replacement costs.
Okay. The reason I ask, because it's on the last page, it just says that the participant is actually responsible.
Yeah,
for the
and
cost of it, so.
we could make that a part of the sentencing, part of the costs of probation. We could add that to the cost. If they break it, that could be added as a cost, just like you would make them pay for, drug and alcohol testing or something like that. So that could easily be addressed.
All right, thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Committee, any more questions for Mr. Wiley? Questions for Mr. Riley or any questions in general from the representatives in attendance or online?
Madam Chair Willow.
Speaker Lowe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could we possibly hear from our legal counsel, please, on this issue?
Mr. Haskins.
Thank you. Anything that we can do to reduce our incarceration costs is a good idea. It just is. Right now, David L. Moss and some of the other facilities are charging us the federal rate. They're treating us just as the federal government, and that's why those rates are so high. A number of those contracts, jail contracts that we entered into, were out of absolute necessity after McGirt. We had no bargaining position. They knew it. They kind of threw us into the federal rates. So to the extent that we can come up with alternatives, whether it is pretrial release, having somebody released on an ankle monitor, that's wonderful. Other options that's part of this contract is sobriety, having ankle monitors that test and make sure that someone, if they're on probation, if they're not drinking and they're not using drugs, there's kind of an interlock breathalyzer component of this where they can go to someone's house and have them breathe into a tube and measure whether they've been drinking. So this is a very viable alternative. It's a very cost-saving alternative. I guess the last comment I would make is these costs have come down so much because back, I'll say in the old day when I was on the bench in Tulsa County, only the very wealthy defendants could afford this because they made them pay for it. It was about $80 a day. So it was a benefit to the individual to not be in jail, and they passed that cost off onto them to make them pay for it on an ongoing basis. I wish I knew the answer of how much the bracelets or these machines cost if they're cut off. I suspect it's probably pricey, but at the same time, that's going to become part of the responsibility. If they damage it, it's probably another offense that they could be charged with. And at the very least, if they in any way try to ruin those devices, most certainly they could be picked back up and put back in jail. It'd be a violation of their probation.
Sir. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Haskins.
Certainly.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Patrick Freeman,
Yes.
Sandra Golden, Randall Hicks,
Yes.
Mark Randolph.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you got 4 in favor and 0 against.
We have 4 in favor, 0 against. The substitute for NCA 22-060 passes. Ms. Killian, funding source, please.
Interest on permanent fund.
Interest on permanent fund. Thank you, ma'am. That being the end of business, next item on the agenda is referred legislation. We have no referred legislation. Next item on the agenda is other business. MNGE, GOAB,
Madam Chair.
Mr.
Madam Chair.
Right. Oh,
Actually, Chairman Chris Ray asked to be moved at the end of the agenda on this part. He had a meeting he had to step out to, so.
okay. Mr. Ray asked to be moved. Okay. Asked to be moved to the end of the agenda. So next on the agenda is One Fire Holding Company, LLC. Who do we have for One Fire? Oh, there you are, Mr. Fife. Mr. Fife, if you'll give us just a brief summary on what's going on with One Fire, sir.
Yes, ma'am. I have it written down and provided the members a copy of the second quarter report. Since the last update to the Business, Finance and Justice Committee, the board has seen a transition of leadership. As referenced earlier, Secretary Branson Thomas is no longer with us. By virtue of my acting in that role, I am the new leadership of the One Fire Holding Company. We're focused on not only carrying out the day-to-day operations of One Fire Holding Company, but getting our FY21 audits completed. I think previously it was indicated in January when Ms. Branson Thomas gave her report. The target date was April to be completed. We're now looking at the end of this month of having the FY21 audits completed. We still have two full-time employees, interim CEO and a financial officer are employed. They're responsible for keeping the operations moving. They have as well been working on the audits to get that completed. We spoke with the auditors earlier in the week, and we are on target to have this completed for FY21 by the end of the month. We've had one meeting with MNB CEO to discuss the potential transition of One Fire and One Fire's future. Bear in mind, I've been in this position only a brief time. There were a number of discussions and activities well before I assumed this responsibility. Under our property management, we are reviewing the CAM expenses, common area maintenance expenses that are affiliated with renters. There are some delinquencies in that area. Past board decisions due to COVID over the last 2 years. Some adjustments were made. I'm currently, as the only board member, reviewing adjusting those costs and recovering those as everyone's coming out of COVID. There is activity up there again, and I think we should make adjustments to recover some of those costs that were deferred. The tax credits, that's through the Council House program. All of those distributions, those proceeds have been made timely and in accordance with the agreements. There is the tax commission to be occupying lease space at the Riverwalk. That is under construction. There's also discussions, interim discussions about a vacant area in the Riverwalk that could potentially house the Attorney General, Tulsa District Court, and the Light Horse Police Department on the property. Another highlight is Big Elk Energy. We've been engaged with the discussion of this. I don't know if the committee would prefer that discussed in something other than open air. I'll leave it to the committee to decide.
Chair, I make a motion to go into executive session. Madam Chair.
We have a motion from Representative Freeman to go in executive session with a second from Representative Randolph. Roll call vote, please.
Patrick Freeman,
Yes.
Sandra Golden,
Yes.
Randall Hicks,
Yes.
Mark Randolph.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you got 4 in favor and 0 against.
We have 4 in favor and 0 against to go in executive session.
Who would you like to stay in?
National Council and Debbie Severson and Fife.
All right. I'm going to put
Okay, we are out of executive session at 5:17. No action taken. Next item on the agenda is announcements. Any announcements? Hearing none. Next item on the agenda is adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
A motion to adjourn from Representative Randolph. Do I have a second? We have a second from Representative Freeman. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Representative Randolph, would you provide the benediction, please?
Lord, we're thankful for today, thankful for the many blessings that you've given us, Lord. And we ask that you just be with us as we travel home, Lord, that you would give us a clear road and a light ride, Lord. And we just thank you for your love, for your mercy, for all that you do for us, Lord. And I ask that you just bless our nation and bless our citizens, Lord, and bless our homes, Lord, and just keep us safe from all evil. Say all these things in the name of Jesus. Amen.
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 Thank you.
We are adjourned at 5:19.